So today Jesus tells us, love your enemies, forgive, and you are forgiven. And today also Joseph is the poster child of God for the forgiveness that Jesus is talking about. For his part, Joseph was able to let go. He was able to no longer be ruled by the feelings that he would have had toward his brothers. Those same brothers who were jealous of him so many years ago, those same brothers who had plotted to kill him, those same brothers who kidnapped him and sold him into slavery and told their father that he died, sold him away from his home and his family, from the father who loved him so dearly. And so after a whole bunch of years, Joseph's doing pretty well at the moment. He's basically second in command. He's second only to the king in all of Egypt. But times have not always been easy. Never mind, he's been away from his family. There were a number of years that he was actually in prison. So I can only imagine how hard emotionally these years must have been. I can only imagine how justifiably angry Joseph must be with his brothers. I have older brothers. I know what I'm talking about. And for the vengeance-minded person, what could be sweeter? Because then his brothers show up and he's in charge. They're in need. They're in a vulnerable position. And he is in this really awesome position to punish his brothers for what they did to him. And who would blame him? I cannot imagine that he hasn't given that some thought these 30 plus years. I can only imagine how tempting it would have been when they showed up. When they showed up beeping. I can only imagine how tempting it would have been to take them hostage and to say, you know, selling me into slavery when I was so young because you were jealous of me, taking me away from the family and the father who I loved so dearly. Well, that has been a little hard to forgive. And don't think that I haven't tried. And yet today Jesus tells us to do just that. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Love your enemies. Love my enemies. Then what's the point of having an enemy? To which Jesus would, I think, say, exactly. I think forgiveness in our culture is a word that's treated a bit inexactly. It's tossed around a lot, or maybe it's treated too simply sometimes. I think forgiveness is probably one of the richest and the deepest parts of being a human. It's not a conversation to enter into lightly. It is not an act to enter into lightly at all. In my experience in our culture, I think it's common to understand forgiveness as saying to someone, oh, it's okay. I think it's common to understand forgiveness as a way of pretending that that hurt never happened. But I think attempting forgiveness in that way can actually be harmful. This less than ideal way of dealing with hurt, harm, of dealing with abuse, forgiveness should not be entered into lightly. The hurt we have, the hurt we get, it's real. It needs to be attended to, not pretended about. It needs to be attended to. It has to heal. Hurt, like any wound, needs to be held up to air and to light and healing. It needs to be held up, but not held on to. God knows, maybe we all do, that holding on to hurt doesn't help it heal. Long-held hurt harms. It harms the hater. every bit as much as it harms the hated. Held long, hurt ripens into resentment, and that is the bitterest and most poisonous of fruits. But somehow, if you suck on it long enough, it tastes sweet like saccharin. And that is when it's actually sucking the life out of you. Hurt and anger and resentment always devour the host. Whoever holds it, whether they destroy their enemy or not, they get destroyed. Holding on to hurt, it might be my right, but it's far from the right thing for me to do. Not for moral reasons, but for spiritual health reasons, for emotional health reasons. The only way out of the cycle of hurt and payback and vengeance, even hatred, the only way out of that is forgiveness. And so for me, forgiveness was best defined by a social worker I worked with years ago than almost any clergy person I've ever heard discuss it. Don't tell Matt I said that. For me, forgiveness by that social worker is best defined as letting go of it. It does not have to lead to reconciliation. Forgiveness is not about telling someone it's okay. Forgiveness is not about letting someone else off the hook. Forgiveness is not about someone else at all. Forgiveness is the work of the wounded person, first and foremost. Forgiveness is the work of God with us in our relationship with God. Forgiveness is the work of God with us, with the world God made, and with all the people in it. The vengeance thing, the back, the forth, the eye for an eye, the tit for tat, whether we act that out physically or carry it out in our minds over and over and over on a loop that only keeps the world that we live in the mess of hurt we're already in. Eye for an eye, you've heard, makes the whole world blind. I don't know about you, but what I do when I'm blinded in my heart and soul, what I do when I can't let go of the injuries, real injuries, inflicted by others, what I do in that blindness, it's ugly. Worse, it really doesn't correct any harms. It only causes more. I learned something. I don't own that which I refuse to let go of. What I refuse to let go of owns me. If I have a sworn enemy, then by Jesus' definition, that enemy has already defeated me. Because I've sunk into that pit to declare an enemy. Forgiveness by ourselves is incredibly hard. It feels impossible sometimes for some, for many. And forgiveness sometimes can only be done maybe by dipping into the love that God gives us. By accessing the grace that we get from God, because we're given that to give away. But sometimes we need to use it ourselves too. Maybe that's how you do it, is dipping into that God, of that loving that God gives us. Because otherwise it's too great for us to do. It hurts too much. It is too heavy. But this forgiveness, this grace, this love that we get from God to give away, that, I'm convinced, is the path to making our world into the kingdom of our God. I know this much is true. God heals harm when we accept healing love. It is absolutely spot on when people, when they talk about this is what they're talking about. When they say, let go, let God. Joseph is using that same love, the same love that Jesus is preaching on today. Joseph has let go of hurt and harm that he has every right to have held on to. It's really, really hard to imagine. I think the only thing harder than imagining it might be doing it. But for the love of God, with the love of God, Jesus tells us we have to. It's the only way for us, and it's the only way for the world that we live in to heal. Pray with me. God, for the love of Jesus and with the love of Jesus, help us grow to be more like Joseph, forgiving as we go and growing as we forgive, so we can be more like the true selves you have made us to be. Give us what we may not always have. Give us the power to forgive. Amen.